Hello and welcome to the Oregon Business Matters podcast, brought to you by Oregon Business and Industry, Oregon's statewide Chamber of Commerce. At Oregon Business Matters, we focus on insights, issues, and initiatives that impact Oregonians' shared prosperity and the state's economic health. I'm Angela Wilhelms, President and CEO of OBI, and your host here at Oregon Business Matters. Today, I have the pleasure to talk with Doug King, President and CEO of Epic Aircraft, which makes the product that won our 2024 Coolest Thing Made in Oregon contest last fall. That was the E1000 GX airplane. And if you know anything about this plane or Epic Aircraft's manufacturing processes, you'll agree that they are both impressive and, yes, terribly cool. So, Doug, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Angela. Glad to be here.
Great. Well, before we get to it, Doug, if you'll indulge me, I would like to say just a couple words about the 2025 Coolest Thing Made in Oregon contest, which is now underway. So every year, OBI, in partnership with Here is Oregon, runs this competition to celebrate Oregon's innovators and makers. And right now, we are in the nomination window where anyone can nominate Oregon-made products they consider cool. It can be food, clothing, tools, airplanes, or whatever, just as long as it's manufactured here in Oregon. From there, a panel of judges will pick 16 finalists to compete in a tournament-style bracket where the winner is ultimately selected through a series of online votes. That voting begins in September, but for now, everyone should, when not driving, of course, hop online and nominate a product. That nomination window is open through July 10 at OregonBusinessIndustry.com/coolestthing2025. So that brings us back to you, Doug, and Epic Aircraft, which again manufactured the reigning Coolest Thing Made in Oregon at its plant in Bend. And we wanted to talk with you about the company, its products, and doing business here in Oregon. So thank you for joining us, and congrats on making Oregon's coolest thing.
I appreciate that.
All right, so to get started, why don't you just tell us in your own words a little bit about Epic, including your own background and how you got here?
Well, Epic was founded in Oregon, and it started as a kit airplane company, and I was a customer of the company in 2008, 2009, which wasn't a great time to be in business anywhere. So Epic went through a bankruptcy at the end of 2009, and I bought the company out of bankruptcy and turned it around. Later resold it, but I've stayed on as CEO the whole time. And we've since gone from being a kit airplane company to being a certified manufacturing aircraft company, which has been a huge journey, an unbelievable amount of oversight by the federal government and bureaucracy and paperwork, and they say that the paperwork has to weigh as much as the airplane or more in order for you to get certified, and that's a really true statement.
That paints quite the picture for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was hundreds of millions of dollars and 7 years to certify the airplane, so it was a big deal. And now we're in full-fledged manufacturing, have been for over 5 years, and it's really been quite an adventure. When we got certified at the end of 2019, we just started to try to deliver airplanes in March. You all remember what happened in March of 2020? COVID hit, and so that was quite a headwind for us. But we managed our way through it, and now it's we're doing great. So really quite an adventure, and it's been great being here in Oregon. I moved up here from California for the company. It was I went all in on Oregon back in 2010. So been here ever since, and I love it.
Well, thank you. We're very glad to have you here. You were kind enough to host OBI's Manufacturing and Innovation Roadshow in 2023. And so we got to take tour guests, including some lawmakers and other policymakers and friends of OBI, on a tour of the manufacturing process. And I got to say, I was gobsmacked. It is so impressive and frankly unbelievable when you walk in the front of the process and see the raw materials and then look at the finished product in a relatively short walk. So, can you talk a little bit about that process and what makes your planes so unique?
Well, our plane is almost all carbon fiber, and those parts are all hand laid up. There's 587 parts that make up the airplane, the carbon fiber parts, and we make them all right here in our manufacturing facility. So what comes to us as a roll of fabric then leaves out the other end of the building as an airplane, and it happens right before your eyes when you walk down the line. So it's exciting. It does take a lot of people. We have over 500 employees here at Epic at our Bend facility, a little over 300,000 square feet under roof. So it's quite a large facility. It takes a lot of people to build a heavily regulated airplane, and sell it. We sell it all over. It's been fantastic.
Well, and let's talk about the people for a second, because that was also something that was just very noticeable as we went on the tour about a year and a half ago, was the pride that the workforce took in what it was building and the finished product and the quality of that product. Can you talk a little bit about, are you having, we hear a lot about employers struggling to find enough workers. And how is that going for you, and generally, what are the types of skills you're most looking for in employees to help make the company tick and grow?
We're constantly hiring and training. We have a full in-house training program. So we bring people right out of high school and college in and train them to be uh, uh, aircraft assembly technicians or uh, other other jobs, different administrative jobs. It's very unique what we do, so it's mostly trained, here. We hire, maybe some people who paint airplanes, or we might hire people from body shops, or a little bit of skilled stuff in that regard. And then with skilled aviation mechanics, we'll hire from the aviation mechanic schools. But mostly we have a lot of right out of high school jobs and a lot of right out of, junior college jobs. So it has been difficult when everybody else was having trouble hiring people. We were too, but I think it's improved somewhat. And, what I can say, the biggest challenge for our employees is, affordable housing here in Central Oregon. They compete with the, what do you call them, the Airbnbs of the world for being able to have a home to rent, and that's been a challenge. But mostly, we've been pretty good. We've been able to hire more recently, and knock on wood, it seems to be okay.
Yeah, that's great. And I know the cost of housing is an issue that affects a lot of communities, but it is an acute situation there in Central Oregon. And I want to give a shout out to the Bend Chamber and some of our partners in that region who are working very hard on trying to find solutions for workers in a variety of sectors. So we mentioned that the E1000 GX, that's the plane that won the coolest thing competition last October. But my understanding is you've taken that cool product and made it even cooler. You recently unveiled a more advanced version, the E1000 AX. Can you talk a little bit about that new product?
Absolutely. The E1000 AX, it's really about automation. We've added a bunch of automation to take even more workload off of the pilot and to give them more available time to focus on situational awareness and what's going on. So it handles things for the pilot, like it's got automatic throttle, so it sets the speed of the airplane automatically. You just dial it in. It's got several other automated features that upload databases, keep your airplane updated automatically. Um, a lot of things that turn on automatically by altitude and turn off automatically when you come down. It's all about automation, and this culminates in the emergency auto land, where if the pilot was to become incapacitated, then a passenger can push a big red button, and then the airplane will land itself. So that's a really quite an amazing feature. Uh, we of course hope no one ever uses it because it means there's something wrong
Of
with the
course, of
pilot,
course,
and
of
that could be
course.
me. So
Well, yes, we
I
hope
would, I,
we hope no one needs to use it, but that is an extraordinary development and precautionary technology. I mean, extraordinary.
yeah, we're not the first to have it, but it's great to add it um, to our airplane. You know, along with a bunch of other features that they will use on a daily basis that really make your life easier. And the easier the pilot has it, kind of the safer that flying is. So they're able to pay attention to what's going on and not be occupied with the too much of the hand flying. Uh, at the time.
Yeah, again, very cool. What's the market for these products? Do you have any trouble meeting demand? Are you able to keep up? I mean, you're growing, so that sends us some signal in this conversation. But talk a little bit about the market out there for these.
Yeah, the market is in this class of airplane, about 250 airplanes are sold worldwide. Last year we delivered 26 airplanes, so about 10% of the market. We'll deliver 30 airplanes this year. One of the things that I used to be in software and I've done other things, and those are purely driven by sales. In in this industry, our lead times are so long, they can be on many items more than a year in advance. You get allocated a certain amount. And so all of those supplies have to come in at the same time for you to build these airplanes. It's a giant coordination with over 300 vendors on the airplane with 13,000 line items that make up the bill of materials. It's a complicated process to bring all that together. So you have to grow relatively slowly. Fortunately, our demand is there, so we can grow. Uh, we intend to do next year probably 36 airplanes.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
it's a seems like a slow growth, but when you're talking about something that's just a little under $5 million, it's still a lot of money.
Yeah, that that is, that still feels like significant. I mean, in a good way, growth for you all to have that slow and steady maturation and being able to do it in a way, like you said, that allows you to still manage both the materials that you get from third party suppliers, but also those raw materials that you make in house, as I understand it.
Oh,
You,
absolutely.
yeah. So talk a little bit about that balance between vertical and horizontal integration and well, I guess that's the wrong way to phrase it, but talk a little bit about the decision between what to supply externally and then what to bring in house and vertically integrate.
Some of the things we just don't have the expertise to make, right? I mean, so like the avionics, those are very specialized. The engines, also very specialized. But there are other things that we have to make that decision on, the make or buy decision. Like a hinge. We could buy the machine shop equipment and and grind them out and have them coated, and we could make the hinges ourselves. We don't, because it's a very competitive environment for machine services, and we can get relatively assured supply. And in that case, we're not going to make our own nuts and bolts. We're not going to make things that are commodity items. But then there are other things that are a little more difficult to make that decision on. For instance, wire harnesses. We were outsourcing to U.S. companies, but going out to outside companies to have our wire harnesses made, and they weren't able to keep up with our demand, and the quality wasn't what we had expected. So, in, combined with the price was high, so we were able to bring all that harness making in house. We added about 20 people to the staff and bought some equipment. We have the facility for it, so we put it all in house. Now it's cheaper, faster, and we got better quality. So those are, that's kind of the easy case to make for a make it in house, and everything sort of goes between those two extremes. And it's a constant decision process internally. What can we consume? Can we save some money? Can we get better quality? And that's what drives that decision process.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and I think it speaks to a lot of what people who aren't in business every day don't realize the volume and complexity of those decisions, whether it's about supply chains, whether it's about workforce, whether it's about facility and how to grow and to capitalize your work. It's these are these are really complicated endeavors, but they're important because at the end of the day you're generating a tremendous amount of economic activity over there in Central Oregon. So again, thank you for doing that. um I
Oh,
just
you're
want I, I
you're
want to
welcome.
oh, well, I just want to touch, you mentioned the regulatory burden, and um you are regulated heavily at the federal level, but then as a business operating here in Oregon, there's obviously state level regulations, local regulations, and just we don't have to get into too much weeds about any specific thing, but just generally speaking, has the regulatory environment gotten more complex, and how hard is that to keep up with amid all those other changes and decisions that you're facing?
Unfortunately, Oregon seems to be uh, either leading the way or bent on catching up with California in how to be more aggressive with employers. And it's really unfortunate. So I'm really glad that your organization helps us try to um, talk some sense into the legislators to walk them off the ledge of all of these crazy ideas that they seem to come up with nonstop. It's funny because you talked about, can you get the employees, and then in the same breath they want to do all of these um, crazy laws about employment law. No employer can get away with taking advantage of their employees in today's market. It's it's just not recognizing reality. We compete for employees. It's a completely different situation than it was 20, 30 years ago, back when employers could do things that didn't seem right, and regulations needed to be drafted. It's not that way anymore. It's swung completely the other way, and employees are being wooed by employers. And we hold a Thursday get together. We feed them Thursday nights. We do, uh, and with food and drinks, and we do lots of parties and fun things. And we have great pay and benefits and matching 401k, and 100% medical for the employees. We're competing. It's uh, that really the legislators need to really look at what's needed, and what they need to do is work on things that resolve the issues we have, which are like housing and making sure that people get the right training and in school and things like that.
Yeah, it is unfortunately lost on so many policymakers that the employer employee relationship is a symbiotic one. Uh, you need employees to be happy and interested in their work, and so employers invest in that through direct compensation and benefits, but also the culture and climate, and also the training and the skills building that you do right there. You have a lot invested in your employees because that's the right thing to do, and it's a necessary thing to do in addition because of the competitive workforce forces that you mentioned. So thank you for indulging me for a second on an obligatory regulatory question. I just want to ask before we wrap it up. You moved to Oregon from California, and what about Oregon? What about Central Oregon in particular? Have you just grown to really appreciate, and why are you happy to now be an Oregonian?
Oh, people are just nicer here. I mean, it's just on a macro level. I really like it here. I like the quality of life. People care about quality of life, and that shows in how they care about each other. And I feel very at home here in Oregon. I really like it.
Well, that's great. Before we sign off, is there anything else you want to share about your company or your story with our listeners before we close?
Oh, I just, I want to thank you for and OBI for doing the coolest thing, made. This came out of the blue, and I think it's wonderful. I think it's great to highlight, we have so many companies. We buy things that are made here in Oregon that we put on the plane, and Oregon has a rich manufacturing base here, and I think it's great to highlight it. So I'm really, really proud to be part of that, and I'm eager to see who the contestants are this year.
Yeah, so are we. And we have an employee who's based in Central Oregon, and he actually ran into one of your employees at the store and noticed they were wearing a sweatshirt bragging about being the coolest thing made in Oregon. So thank you for taking pride in the competition and participating last year. We can't wait to see what gets nominated in 2025. And again, we encourage anybody listening to go online to oregonbusinessindustry.com/coolest thing 2025 to nominate a product, and then stay tuned this September and October for the voting and ultimately the announcement of our new winner in that competition. So, Doug King of Epic Aircraft, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. The Oregon Business Matters podcast is a production of Oregon Business and Industry, your statewide chamber of commerce. And for more information about OBI, again, visit oregonbusinessindustry.com. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.